Welcome to the diner where we serve up culture from a short order kitchen. Step up to the counter and let us serve you a slice of mental pie. Not a feast, just a snack, a deep thought to chew on from a big, meaty book. It'll go good with a cup of coffee, and then you can get back to the fray with a few beautiful new thoughts to think. It's season 2, and the Blue Plate special is still Timothy Petitsis' The Ethics of Beauty, that daunting doorstopper of popular theology that turns out to be amazingly accessible and powerfully relevant. This time we're talking about his essay on sex and gender, Only Priests Can Marry, the reconciliation of men and women in Christ. Roll up to the counter and have a couple bites of it with us.
Hey, we're back again talking about chiasm. We thought we were going to get into talking about gender already, but it turns out that just the very idea of chiasm can be explored in many, many ways. So one of the ways that is strange that we can explore this is that Petitsis himself turns us to the experience of death and grief to understand chiasm. I like to use the analogy of the 3D glasses where you have one red and one blue that brings out depth in a picture. But you can also see chiasm in poetic structure simply in the ABBA format of a poem. You see one rhyme echoed in a further line and that kind of symmetry inside the poem itself. What we didn't talk about last time at all was how chiasm applies to gender. So do you want to maybe unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so when we're talking about gender, in that big long quote we read in the last episode, he talked about how we are all called to be priests, prophet, and kings, but not in the same order. And so that's where he gets into the chiastic nature of gender, where he says that women are called to be prophetic first, and then men are called to be kings first. And it's not that we are not all called to all three, but it's just that we need to approach them in a different order. And when we do that, then what he says, the way he puts it, and I love this, is he says, when we love, we become the symbol of what we love. So we have to talk about what that means, because what does that mean to be the symbol of what you love? And we have to remember that a symbol is bringing together two things that are different. It literally means throwing together, right?
Throwing together, uniting, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So one example that he gives that I think really helps to shed a little bit of light on it is in the example of like when we're grieving a loved one, who has passed away, they're the one who is dead, right? But we're going through life as though we were dead. We're sad. We don't want to live. We don't want to do all the normal things that living people do. We would rather just be, quiet and think about the loved one. It's almost like our life has kind of become muted. A damper has been put on it. Whereas the dead one is alive to us. Like they're the one we're thinking of the most, and they're very alive in our minds and our hearts. They're our primary focus.
It's an interesting example because I remember when my mother died, I initially did not feel her absence right away. And so it's really quite what you're explaining here. Like I was instantly plunged into grief. I mean, her death was not unexpected. She was sick for several years and she was able to pass away at home under hospice care. But one of the strange experiences of that grief is when her soul left her body, it did not leave the room right away. She was still very much present for a while. And furthermore, there was absolutely an element of closeness in the initial stages of the profundity of that grief. So he's not just making stuff up, people. He's talking from experience. And I think that other people who have had similar experiences of death will understand this. Mm-hmm. That in the moment that you are feeling the truncation of the relationship, you're also profoundly understanding that nothing has really been truncated. It's just been transformed. Now, obviously, non-Christians and people without a lot of spiritual experience might not have the perception or the vocabulary to describe the reality of this. But then, at the same time, sometimes they do. Sometimes you get really remarkable accounts of near-death experiences or even death experiences from people who have no traditional religious formation at all. So this does appear to be some sort of ubiquitous human experience.
Yeah. And what happens in that chiasm is that the one becomes an icon of the other.
Yeah.
An image. The symbol is presenting us with an image of the reality of the, and that's where the paradox comes in.
Right.
It's hard to talk about because the words don't quite do it justice. It's one of those things where the experience, the knowledge of the experience is something that words don't quite fit.
I think this is because when we talk about chiasm, we're not talking about a noun per se. We're talking about a mode of experience. So we're actually talking about a verb. So it's not like that we are perceiving a noun somewhere. We're not looking at a chiasm. We are chiasming, right? Like when we're reading the chiasm in the Psalms, we're participating in that. So, well, so try to, just as an analogy, try to describe the experience of running.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, you can talk about what your body is doing and all of that, but that's not the same thing as being the runner and doing the running. Right,
exactly. Or, you've mentioned this before. There's that really wonderful analogy about orthodoxy and the horse.
Yes. Our bishop was talking one time and he was saying, in the West, the way that theology works in the West, it's as if, you've got these men presented with a horse and they will talk about the horse and they will describe the horse and they will measure the horse and they will weigh the horse and figure out all of the things that can be said about the horse. And, the Orthodox theologian will get on the horse and ride the horse. And there's a profound difference. You can know all about the horse without ever having experienced riding that horse. But once you get on the horse, then you know so much that all of those measurements and descriptions can't encompass.
Right. So in our analogy here, in this horse analogy, chiasm, I think, is probably like a saddle. It's not the horse itself. The horse itself is our experience of God, our relationship with him, our relationship with the universe around us, the cosmos that he's created, our relationship with other human beings. The saddle, then, the thing that keeps us in place and keeps us from falling to the left or the right, is this understanding of our motion as chiastic. So in the grief experience, we are both dead and we are both living, but mirror images of each other, right? The griever is dead because their soul is mourning. The dead one is alive in Christ and experiencing a fullness of life that moments before they had not experienced.
Right.
And likewise, the dead one is experiencing the loss of their body, just as we continue to experience the continuity of our body. The mirror image is not an exact image. It's a reflection with a difference that allows us to understand the depth of the difference and the depth of the unity. Well, if you've had any experiences with grief yourself, not even necessarily with a person, but even with a pet, think about how those experiences are chiastic.
Yeah, and think about the experiences you've had where the words don't describe the reality of the experience, where you know something in your being that words can never do justice to. Think about those kinds of experiences that you've had, and we'll be back next time, hopefully to really talk about gender.
For real this time.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us at the Diner. If this season resonates with you, you may be interested to know that over the summer, I released the sex ed curriculum I created for my own teenagers. Sex Ed for Sane People is a high school level discourse on human sexuality that, among many things, is informed by the understanding explained here in Ethics of Beauty. It's interactive, meant to be customized by you for your students, and it's available for download on my website, lauraewolf.com.